Alrighty, we are back. Welcome. This is another episode of Coin Stories, where I'll be talking about um, the day that I started getting into coin collecting. Also, um, I'm on vacation. That's why you see the beard. I gotta shave it off soon because didn't grow fast enough, and I gotta go to work in a couple days. But anyways, so the story starts where I want to say I was 8 or 9 at the time. Growing up, I wasn't poor, but at the same time, we did have to do things to get by. Meaning that I never had brand new clothes. I always had to wait until my brother grew out of his, and then I would inherit all of his stuff. Again, it's not too bad, but of course, being a child, you always want your own things. You don't want hand-me-downs and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so it was the mid-90s. I want to say 92, 93, but it could have been closer to 95. At the time, I was still pretty young. I want to say I was 8 or 9 at the time. And one of the ways or my family, uh, got money was my father's boss was a was an alcoholic. And what I mean is, every week we would go to his house, and he would have 15 to 20 cases of empty beer cans. Now, the cases are different from the cases you kind of see now. These are the old style cases where there were no tops. I'll put a picture over here. Um, and so he was an avid drinker of Budweiser. Ugh. The taste, the smell, everything was just nasty. But anyways, so we would always wait until my father got off of work, and then we would go to my father's boss's house, and we would first talk story, or my father would talk story with the boss, how the day was, what's coming up, all these things, and then we'll get to loading the cans into our Land Cruiser. And I always remembered it. I don't remember the day or anything like that. All I remember, it was at night, and I always enjoyed going to his house, but at the same time, it was the one thing I hated the most. I enjoyed it because when you walk in, uh, once you walk into the main area, he had I want to say a bookshelf, but instead of books, it was albums. It was push albums uh, across the wall, and it was sparkling white, blast white. And when I went over there, I looked at these coins, and I didn't know what they were. All I knew is it was something shiny, and I thought they were foreign coins. Coins I've never seen before in my life. Later, uh, I come to find out that it was Morgan dollars, peace dollars, and Franklin half dollars. That was the main sets that I saw when I was walking in, and these were blast white. Now, keep in mind, this was in the 90s. Now, my father and my mother are both federal employees, even back then. And of course, my father's boss, another federal employee. And so, he had the means to acquire beautiful pieces of dollars, whatever's, of coins. And back in the 90s, although they were expensive, with a federal employee wage, especially a boss position, um, it's very easy to see how he can acquire such beautiful pieces, especially glass white. Because back in the 90s, toning wasn't really a craze. The whole thing in the 90s were actually mint gems, blast white or red for the for the copper sets. So yeah, I would spend the time just admiring these unknown coins while my father and his boss chit chatted. Eventually, we had to go and had to pick up the cans, and this was the part I hated the most, because any soda, any canned liquid, be it beer, soda, juice, they tend to attract insects. Because my father's boss, he would leave the cans outside. Um, so I would get to picking up. I would say 3, maybe 4 cases. I mean, they were all completely empty. But I could only carry 3 or 4 because it was so high I couldn't see over the top. Keep in mind, I was still 8 or 9 years old. So every time I would pick it up, I would walk, and almost every week I did this. Almost every time there would be a giant roach that would come out of the box and just tap me on the hand. Being a young child, I'd drop the cans, and some of these cans weren't fully emptied. Back in the day, you didn't have to rinse out the cans; you could just turn it in as is. But yeah, so I would drop the 3 or 4 cases of Budweiser beer, and once or twice it would hit at an angle in such that the sludge from the fermenting beer, would splash onto my toe, and it's a horrible thing, and it smells just as bad. And this sludge was a gooey mixture, so it's almost like when you get the burgers and you get that little goo. You can't really just go like that. You really have to flick it. So I had to do that with my feet. Bear in mind now, I still had the roach on my hand. So, of course, I was trying to do the hokey pokey with my hand and my foot. Both were not leaving my body. So I had to prioritize and go for the living creature. And this is the thing. This is why I hate roaches even to this day. Because they look so ugly. So I went to try to whack it. And it saw what I was doing. And the worst part about it is these ones could fly. And I don't know what it is about roaches, but when they fly, they always fly to one spot. Your face. So I'm trying to matrix my way out of this roach, and still flicking this gooey mess on my foot. So it was very traumatic for me. It was a life-changing moment in my life, in a positive and negative way at the same time. But with that being said, I guess either my father or my father's boss saw that I took a liking to his collection. So what he did was he went out and bought 2 folders, one for me, one for my brother. Now he bought me the Lincoln Cent push folder from. It was a short edition. I want to say it was the 50 onward. And then he bought my brother the main folder, which was the '09 to current. Um, which is funny because I'm the one who ultimately picked up uh, the hobby. So I don't know if you ever noticed, but there's several ways to coin collect. You have the folder, the album or binder, you have the capsules, you have the slabs, um, and then you have the acrylic. Uh, and each way is fine if you know what you're doing. Unfortunately, I was still in the early stages, still understanding, and it wasn't too bad because it was the '50s to current, and I believe that edition actually ended on 2000, not 2000, 1999. It started at 1999. So if you're dealing with the push folders, the one problem you'll find is sometimes it won't fit. Either it's too tight or too big. The reason for this is if it's too big, it's because your coin has been worn down so much, even around the edges, that they fall out. You can see this a lot with, I want to say, the Liberty nickels. I mean, Liberty quarters, the standing Liberty quarters. If you ever take a roll of them and you match them to a roll of, let's say, Washington silver quarters, you'll realize that one roll is slightly smaller than the other. And you can probably fit, I want to say, 4 to 5 extra standing Liberty quarters to make the stack the same height. That's just wear on the coins. I didn't really encounter that problem until I started getting a little more serious into the collecting. But I did find that the problem I encountered was the slots were too tight, and I really had to manhandle the coins into the slot, and it would normally stick out slightly. And I always try to hammer it in. Again, 8 or 9 years old, and I was only dealing with the '50s to current cents. I wasn't handling 14s and 31s and stuff like that at the time. Okay. So my father saw me struggle, and then he went out to the lumber store, and you have these wooden rods used to straighten out a plant. What you do is you take the wooden rod, you put it close to the plant, and then you tie the branch that's kind of falling, and you tie it to the rod, and then eventually the plant will grow up with the rod. So you got one of those, the exact diameter of the Lincoln cent, and then he cut them off so we can hand hold it. And when he got us that, I was just hammering those Lincoln cents down into the push folder. So I was taking all these BU Lincoln cents because, again, '50s to current, and it was early '90s. So most of these were red brown, mint condition coins, and I was effectively turning them into VF coins, or environmentally damaged coins, kind of things. But it was always a treat when you can finish a row, and you can sit back and enjoy it. And for me, the way it started out was my father would start saving his coins, and he would put it into a jar, and then once a week after we finish collecting the cans, rinsing them out, crushing them, then our treat was he would take the jar of coins, dump it out on the table, and we can search through them to see if we can fill off our book. Like I said, my brother, he never really picked up the hobby, never really picked up the interest. So I was able to fill up my book a lot faster than him. And eventually I acquired his coin album, or his push folder, through my weekly allowance. And then I started filling out those things. And the whole idea was, it was a lot cheaper to collect cents than it was to collect anything else. Until you start getting deeper into the Lincoln cents. I would argue that I think the cheapest set out there currently would probably be the Jefferson nickel collection. That's got to be the easiest, or not the easiest, but one of the cheapest ones to collect. This is standard dates, standard mint. This is not key dates error. If you just go by the year and mint mark, I would say the Jefferson nickels would be the cheapest, only because the Jefferson nickels had a short run of silver coinage, whereas the dimes had a longer run span, and that goes with the quarters as well. So a standard silver dime or standard silver quarter will command a lot more just for the silver content than the standard Jefferson nickel. But anyways, so I started plugging in the dates. I got a few teens, 20s, 30s, was hitting the 40s, 50, 60, 70, 80 completed. 90s, I was just having to wait until the new year came out. I was fully set on this, and then about 3-4 years later, I hit the wall. I couldn't collect anything else anymore. There were coins that were just so elusive that I could never find them in any circulated set. And of course, these are the standard ones. These are the key dates, the semi-key dates. You're looking at the 1909 SVDB, 1909S. You have the 1914D. The one that messed me up is that I had the Dansko album, and this is the one thing I hate about the albums, is it forces you to collect what they tell you to collect. And what I mean by that is, if you had the push folder for the Dansko album, the starting date, they would include the 1922 no D, or they would call it plain. Now, that is technically not a standard issue, right? Because there was no Philadelphia, right, for the 1922. So they could have just did 1922D. And I mean, the 1922 no D is technically not an error, but at the same time, it's not a standard issue. All it was the mint employees not really caring too much about the quality, and they figured no one would notice. And then they would put in, I think they put in the 55 double die too. I forget what they put in, but there were some things where they didn't have to put it in. But I was struggling with the 14, the 22, the 31, the 24. I think it was Denver, or I think it was the 24 of San Francisco. And then I realized that there were a whole bunch of other cents that I wasn't collecting because I had no idea about them. I didn't know they had a proof 1909 Lincoln cent, because the proofs didn't start for the Dansko album until, I want to say, the 50s or maybe the 60s. So I didn't know that there were proof versions in the earlier dates. And that was just so frustrating for me. Also, I didn't understand what you could and couldn't do. So years passed and I still had the album. And I was collecting coins, but the internet wasn't fully available to me, or it was, but I just didn't know how to fully use it at the time. So my brother went to the Marines, and then when he came back, he's told me, "Hey, I got this amazing thing that can clean almost anything." And he goes, "Yeah, here." So he gives me this can called Neveldol. He goes, "You should try it on your Lincoln Sense." So I tried. It's basically a piece of cloth, almost like cotton, with some harsh solid items inside. And then it was drenched in some kind of, I don't know what it is, oil or what. And then you just take a bit of cloth, and then you just kind of take the Lincoln Scent and just rub it like that. And sure enough, turned all my Lincoln Scents bright red. I had a bright red G4 1909 SVDB. And I didn't realize what I had done until it was too late. Eventually, I sold off the set. That's why you don't see any real footage of this. But I was able to complete the entire Dansko album. What they wanted me to collect, I was able to collect it all. And then I sold it. And when I sold it, because I did tell them that, hey, almost all the coins was clean. Because, 1909 to, I want to say the 30s, maybe even the 40s, were all cleaned. The 50s and forward, they were just bright red already. But they were starting to tone as well, only because of the humidity in my part of the area. But when I sold it, I basically sold it for the combined value of the key and semi-key dates. All the other ones were non-factors. But I love the Lincoln Sense until 2010. Well, I want to say 2009. 2009, it was okay, but at the same time, the designs were just bleh. And then you look at the 2010 Union Shield, because when they came out with that, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I think we should abandon the pennies just like the other countries too, because the design was just terrible. You have an intricate design on the obverse. Lincoln, he had cheek lines and everything like that, and you go from previous reverse designs, such as the wheat cent design, beautiful, intricate. You had things to distinguish details, such as the wheat lines, to say, oh, this is at minimum AU, because all lines were intact, or this was bad grade and stuff like that. Then you had the memorial cent, which was amazing as well, because you can actually, if you got the brand new ones, I didn't know this until someone told me when I was in school, that they actually put Lincoln in the middle of that Lincoln Memorial. I just thought that was amazing. And then you have the steps and stuff like that. You had things to distinguish how detailed your Lincoln Cent was. And then they go out with the Union Shield, and everything was just bland. So I kind of lost interest on the Lincoln Cent collection, but I'm thinking about restarting it. But you gotta remember that this one is one of the longest running coins out there, and it has so many varieties. You have proofs almost all the years. I know in the beginning years they had some proofs, and then they stopped and stuff like that. Then you have the special mint sets. You have the novelty ones like the W's, reverse proofs and stuff like that. The Lincoln Cent is a monster challenge to start. You know, if you want one of those easy wins, I would say the Jefferson Nickels is a good way to go. I mean, before it used to be the Washington quarters because they're a nice piece. The only problem is now with the novelty quarters that are coming out. You know, you have the state quarters, the territorial. You have the national park sets. Then you have the America the Beautiful sets. You know, you're looking at what, 200 coins in the last decade, and that's Denver, that's Philadelphia, San Francisco clad, San Francisco silver, San Francisco circulated, West Point circulated, special. I know they did a satin finish set. It's getting crazy. You know, I mean, I would say the Jefferson Nickels would be the easiest jumping off point for new collectors. Then you can go to the Roosevelt dimes. But honestly, the Roosevelt dimes are nice. But if you could, the Mercury dimes are nice, a nicer set. It just looks nicer. But anyways, that was my tale of how I got into collecting and what I started with when I got into collecting. With that being said, let me know in the comments how you got started, or what was your first set you started when you got into collecting. And I'll check you guys out on the next one. See ya.